I know we bring this up every once in a while. Just, those of you that are new, Travis and I were roommates in college. That's exactly right. Oh, boy. I don't know if you heard him, but oh, boy. So I wanted to tell you a story. No, I actually won't. Although it would fit with what I want to talk about. By the way, I just wanted to acknowledge there's a growing number of people who are watching online. So if you're watching online, we're really glad that you are. We are excited that you're in the room too. We think there's something special about that. Our mission statement is to help everyone take their next step closer to Jesus. It's the goal. It's the goal for me today. That's my mission for me to take my next step closer to Jesus, and that's true for you as well. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, because when you read the Bible and you read these huge stories that are taking place, God does these incredible, miraculous things, and it's just so, supernatural and over the top, and, it's parting the Red Sea, and it's Noah's Ark, and it's David and Goliath, and it's just like these obvious, amazing things. But I think a lot of what God does in our lives is actually pretty quiet. It's actually pretty subtle. It's stuff that we wouldn't necessarily pick up on unless we're really paying attention. One of the things our staff does every week, every Tuesday, we get together for our staff meeting, and the staff meeting starts, we pray, and then we talk about what are your stories from Sunday. And what we do is we ask everybody, hey, what is something that you noticed that was good that we want to draw everybody's attention to? It could be small, little, subtle things. And it doesn't have to be Sunday, but it just sounds better to say, what are your stories from Sunday? It can be just about any time. I wanted to give you a few highlights. These aren't all me. That happened to me, but these are just some highlights from the recent stories from Sunday. A dad and a son were leaving the building. The 3-year-old, unprompted, told me he loved church and then gave me a hug. That did happen to me, and that was very sweet. A new family came, and they connected with so many people that they were the last people to leave the building. A brand new, first-time visiting family, last people to leave the building. That's pretty impressive because they were just having so many good conversations. Sometimes it'll be something like, I noticed so-and-so just have a powerful moment during a song. We sang How Great Thou Art, and you could, they're tearing up, and you could tell. And when I talked to them later, it was because this song was special because my grandma or my grandpa, it's just something that was special. So it's something like that. Not too long ago, a first-time visitor was in St. Paul and didn't have a ride to church, and he didn't know any of us, so couldn't call any of us. And he took a bus from St. Paul to Woodbury, and then, get this, in 2026, hitchhiked from the bus station to the church building. Hitchhiked. That's pretty incredible. That's like 1970s stuff. He hitchhiked here, and he got here way early because you can't always time things, and so he was sitting here about an hour before class started. And I'm like, can you just tell everybody at church to show up that early? That would be incredible. Just sitting there, just while we're all getting ready. It was amazing. Someone pulled me aside after church and asked for prayer about something they hadn't shared with anyone else. I was able to connect them with the resources they needed. I mean, it's just stuff, just little things that happen on Sunday that we note. And there's lots more than that. That's just what the staff notes. There's stuff that you've interacted with other people, and you note what's going on in their lives. And you're like, oh, I see that maybe God is doing something in them, but it's quiet. It's subtle. It's not overt. I think that stuff is cool, and I think that leads us to where we are in the book of Acts. We are in the book of Acts, and this is where we are in the timeline of the book of Acts. So you remember, the book of Acts is an origin story of Christianity. How did Christianity go from this small group of people? Jesus had 12 apostles, and there were about 120 people after his death that had gathered and witnessed him resurrected Jesus. And there's just this small little group of people. They're afraid of the ruling authorities. How did it go from that to something that sociologists, non-believing sociologists, estimate there might have been 20,000 churches by 350 AD? 20,000 churches. That's more than the amount of Starbucks there are in North America. That is wild. How did that happen in such a short period of time? In fact, by 2050, it's estimated that the Roman Empire was majority Christian. How did that happen? That is unbelievable. And Acts tells that story. Luke has been reporting on that story, that expansion, through individual people's stories. And then you get to Acts chapter 12, and it's a story, but it feels just a little different. It's not like somebody new discovering Jesus. It's a different interaction. We talked about Paul last week and how he had that experience on the road to Damascus with Jesus. And now we flash, it's not flashback, I guess, but meanwhile, back at the ranch, back in Jerusalem, we've got the original characters. We've got Peter again, and something's happening here, and it's fascinating. It's insightful. I think it's funny. And so what I want to do is walk through this story this morning and just draw our attention to several things, and then really just make one point this morning. So if you have your Bibles, your devices, Acts chapter 12, we're going to start in verse 1. Acts chapter 12, verse 1. It was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. It means he was beheaded. Now, I don't know if you're like King Herod. That kind of rings a little bit of a faint bell. Yeah, it was a family name. It's kind of like the name Patrick in my family, my dad's side of the family. There's Uncle Pat, there's Big Pat, there's Little Pat. I just somehow got Patrick, and it's because my mom was like fiercely defensive about people not calling me Pat. So every time, if you call me Pat, she'll swoop in from anywhere she is in the world and just be like, actually, it's Patrick, and then she'll swoop right back out. So I got to be Patrick all my life, but there were a lot of Herods. There was Big Herod, there was Little Herod, there was Uncle Herod, there was Cousin Herod. And so Grandpa Herod tried to kill Jesus. When you read the nativity story, you're like, oh, that's Grandpa Herod. Uncle Herod did kill John the Baptist. Now, Little Herod kills the Apostle James and arrests Peter. So murder runs in the family. Now I want you to mentally note, James' death in this passage. It's just short, very factual statement. James was put to death. This is James the Apostle. This is a big deal, but it doesn't get a lot of reporting here. But it's important. We're going to come back to that idea. Verse 3. When Herod saw that this met with approval among the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter also. He's like, oh, people like it when I kill these apostles. I'm going to kill another one. I'm going to give the people what they want. This happened during the festival of unleavened bread. This is the Passover. This is when Jesus was actually killed several years prior. So Herod is king, but he's not king like we think. He's really an appointee, kind of a governor position, and he's trying to keep the Roman officials who have put him in power happy, and he has to keep them happy by keeping the local populace satisfied. And when he discovers killing Christians helps the local populace feel good, he's like, well, let's do more of that. He's appointed, but he can be unappointed. You gotta build some goodwill among the voters. You gotta break a few eggs, right, to make an omelet. Verse 4, after arresting Peter, he put Peter in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. It's a lot of soldiers. Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Passover. He's trying to get maximum publicity out of this incident. I want to kill this guy. I want everybody to see it. I want to get the glory. I want to get the approval ratings up from this incident. Now, verse 5. So Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. Yeah, seems sensible, right? That's what we would do. If Steve was arrested and they were going to kill him, we'd be like, hey, I think we should get together and let's have a little prayer meeting because we want to prevent something like that from happening. So this is scary times, right, for the church. This is not good. There's a lot of uncertainty. It's tough to figure out, how do I live out my faith in some sort of visible way, knowing that it could cause me tremendous problems, or knowing that it might get someone like Peter, a leader in the church, killed. They don't have any political power. There's no recourse. They don't have any other levers to pull, so they pray, which is really the most important thing that a person could do anyway. But we tend to wait till we have exhausted all our other options. And prayer is something our church focuses on. I think you know this. I think you know that you can submit prayer requests, that we pray about them, that there's a prayer team of our varsity prayer members, and they all get together and they learn about what's going on and they pray, and you want those people praying for you because it feels like, I know God listens to everybody, but man, it feels like some people are better at it than others. And so if you got stuff going on, you got to share it. You got to let people know so that these folks can pray for you. This is big stuff. You can join the prayer team. By the way, they don't really have any auditions. You won't get cut. Nothing like that. You can join it. It's great. So this is big stuff. They pray about everything. And they pray about small stuff too. But by the way, I did want to share this story real quick. A fellow dad of at the school that my kids attend was sharing a prayer story. And I thought it would be interesting to share with you just to see what you think, just gauge your reaction. This dad's daughter was having a terrible experience. She was playing JO volleyball, which is kind of like just a little extra level. It doesn't mean she's elite, but just like this is extra volleyball. You don't have to do this. She's into it. She's playing JO volleyball, having a terrible experience with her coach. Her coach is just super mean to her. She doesn't get any playing time. And I know parents are like, well, yeah, parents are always complaining about their kid not getting playing time, but she's pretty good. She deserved a little playing time. In fact, the coach was so mean that she didn't even allow her to play in practices. She had to sit out practices, and the parents are paying money for their kid to learn more about volleyball, and this coach just doesn't like her at all. And it actually gets worse. The coach would text really mean things to her, told her she was mentally unstable, told her she was a problem. Now, the crazy thing about this is if you think of the nicest person you know, I don't know, Miss Shirley is probably the nicest person I know. Well, this girl is even nicer. She is super sweet, super kind. I know you're like, that can't be possible, but she's just a genuinely good human being, and she's being mistreated by this coach this way. I think we would all be like, oh, wow, something's going on. This is bad. Now, the parents are trying to figure out, what do we do? Some parents would be like, pull them. And these parents are like, yeah, but we know this is real life, and we want to prepare our kids for real life, and so we want them to figure out what they need to do, but we don't really want to encourage our kids to quit. But we told our daughter, in this case, what is happening is so bad, we would support your decision to leave the team and quit this program. And she said, I don't want to. I don't want to let my teammates down. I want to see this through as hard as it is. And they were like, but we're worried about your mental well-being. And she was determined to see this experience through. Well, they got to a tournament, and it's just like day after day after day of experiencing this. They got to a tournament, and the mom pulls aside another mom who she's been sharing some of this with and says, do you mind if we pray about today? I just don't want my daughter to have to experience more of this. And so they get together, and they pray, and they are kind people. I would be praying, God, give this coach food poisoning. Give them massive engine failure on their car, something. That's what I would be praying. But they were like, bless our enemies, and this is hard, and help God deal with this situation. Very kind, thoughtful prayers. Mom prays. The parents have not interacted with the coach. Coach leaves the tournament abruptly. Doesn't tell anybody, just leaves, and an assistant coach steps in to finish coaching. Then coach quits coaching. No explanation. They're just gone. Now, this dad's telling me this story, and he's like, man, if you want something done, get my wife to pray. And I'm like, I agree. I can think of some people I'd want her to pray for, too. That would be actually really, really great. Now, some of you might hear that story, and you might think, what an interesting coincidence that whatever was going on in this woman's life coincided with the mom's prayer. It could be. I'm thinking, wow, that is amazing, and it encourages me, inspires me to pray more about the regular daily stuff that I'm trying to solve my own problems. That's how I respond to that story. Prayer, it matters, it matters. Verse 6, the night before Herod was to bring him, Peter, to trial, which would end. This wasn't going to be a trial. There wasn't going to be a jury deliberating, and there wasn't going to be a chance that Peter got off. This trial would end with Peter's head disassociated from his body. That's how this trial was going to end. That night, Peter was what? Sleeping between two soldiers, bound with chains. Sentries stood guard at the entrance. I can't sleep if I have a dentist appointment in the morning. I can't sleep if the white noise in my room isn't quite right. And Peter is going to be executed in the morning. He's chained to two soldiers, and he's sawing logs? How in the world, Peter, are you sleeping? How is this happening? Now, this right here could be a whole sermon. How did Peter learn to sleep like that? Some of you, maybe Peter was just one of those people. This is the story I was going to tell you about Travis. One time, Travis and I were roommates. It's on my notes. I was like, should I tell it? And I thought, no. And then here I am on the moment. I'm going to tell you. Travis's dad called him, and I was like, Travis is asleep. And his dad's like, well, wake him up. Okay. I did everything I could think of to wake this man up, and he did not. I was like, I think we might need to call 911. He's in a coma. This is the craziest thing. So Travis and Peter have a lot in common, evidently. Boy, man, think about just, I think maybe Peter learned to sleep by seeing Jesus sleep in a boat during a storm. Like, you got to wake up, Jesus, we're going to die. And Jesus is annoyed. He's annoyed. Boy, I don't know. When I have got stuff in my life, I lie awake. I'm going through plans. I'm going through contingency plans. I'm thinking worst case scenario and what I do if this happens and what do I do if that happens. You could have a whole sermon, but the sermon would be, Lord, grant us the faith to take a nap. Right? Just to take a nap. That's right. Verse 7, suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared, and light shone in the cell. He, the angel, struck Peter on the side and woke him up. Get up quick, he said, and the chains fell off Peter's wrists. He's so out that the angel has to strike him to wake him up. Luke includes that detail in there, has to strike him. I don't know, is that still true with Travis? Does he sleep pretty heavy? Not anymore. He's thinking about stuff now that he's got... That's good. That's good. I had to strike him. And this isn't like a gentle, like, hey, buddy, time to get up. Got to get up. Have you ever had, like, your kids, when you had kids, like, walk into the room and you just sensed a shift in the presence of the room? Yeah. I had one of my daughters. She's now an adult. And when she was probably 4 years old, she had these little glasses that made her eyes look really big. And I was sleeping, and she got real close to see if I was sleeping late at night. Real close, like that close, and you open your eyes to see these huge, gigantic eyes staring at you, and you're like, that is the scariest thing I've ever experienced. I could watch every scary movie, and it would not compare to the adrenaline that just went through my body. So the angel's not like, hey, Peter, buddy, time to wake up. You know, he's not using like a nice, soft ringtone to wake this guy up. He has to strike him. Same word as what happened in the garden when Peter cut off a guy's ear. Same Greek word, struck the guy, cut off his ear. That's how the angel had to wake Peter up. I'm just so fascinated by that. Verse 8, then the angel said to him, all right, put on your clothes and sandals. And Peter did so. Okay, now wrap your cloak around you, follow me, the angel told him. Peter followed him out of prison, but Peter had no idea what the angel was doing was really happening. He thought he was seeing a vision. I get that. Have you ever had such a good nap? You're like, you wake up and you're like, I don't know what day of the week it is. I don't know where I am. What's my name? Like, it's just like, you can relate. This is a great detail. And then he gives him step-by-step directions. He's like, Peter, all right, can you put your coat on? Yeah. Peter, you also need your shoes? Peter, can you get your cloak on, buddy? We are trying to escape prison here. Does that not feel relatable? Parents, does that not feel relatable? I went to school the other day, and there was a mom picking up her son, and her son came to meet her. She was inside the lobby. Her son came to meet her, dragging his open backpack behind him, no shoes, and one sock on. And you're just like, buddy, how did this happen? Were you thinking, oh, it's time to go. I guess I better put my one sock on and drag my backpack behind me, trailing all the stuff that was inside it. This is what it feels like with Peter. The angel's like, buddy, can you get dressed? Can you get a move on? Do you hear that? I hear that in the story. So that's Peter, bleary-eyed, just like, what is happening? Verse 10, they passed the first and second guards and came to the iron gate leading to the city. It opened for them by itself, and they went through it. When they had walked the length of one street, suddenly, just as suddenly as he came, the angel left him. Verse 11, then Peter came to himself and said, oh, okay, I think I know what's going on here. Without a doubt, the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from Herod's clutches and from everything the Jewish people were hoping would happen. By the way, I want you to notice this. When you read some of these stories, just kind of think of the subtext that's happening. You are reading Peter's thoughts. So who's the only person in the world that knows what Peter's thinking? Well, it's Peter. So when Luke tells this story, he's telling an account that he's heard from someone, either Peter or someone Peter relayed this to. I think that's pretty interesting. You're hearing Peter's inner dialogue, inner monologue with this. So Peter, it dawned on him like, oh, I guess I'm not dreaming. I'm really out here on the street with my one sock on. Now what do I do? When this dawned on him, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, where many people had gathered and were praying. That's the church. They're still doing their thing. Verse 13, Peter knocked at the outer entrance, and a servant named Rhoda came to answer the door. Verse 14, when she recognized Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed, she ran back without opening the door and exclaimed, Peter's at the door. And I think this is funny. I think this is meant to be funny. I think this is meant to be a detail that helps humanize the story, because this is exactly what humans would do in a story like this. They get so wound up, almost in an excited panic, that they just lose their minds. I don't remember, maybe it was somebody in the room that shared this story with me, but they were having their first child. Their go bag was ready to get to the hospital. Wife's water broke. Husband kind of lost his mind, got in the car and started heading down the road, and his wife's still at home. That's what humans do. They're just like, they just get all wound up, and that's exactly what happens in this story. But I think it's kind of funny how the group of people who were praying that Peter would be rescued respond. Verse 15, they're like, you are out of your mind, lady. She kept insisting, like, I'm telling you, it's Peter. And so this is what they said, and I think they just said it to placate her, but they said, it must be his angel, which is such a weird thing. It must be his angel. But Peter kept on knocking, and when they opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. Because, by the way, why would an angel be more believable? And if there was an angel knocking at your door, wouldn't you be like, we should let him in? So it's just, I think really they're just trying to say, Rhoda's lost it. She's been up too late. She's praying too hard. She's just lost her mind. Rhoda, it's his angel. But I don't think they believed that either. I think they were just trying to give her some explanation. Now, verse 17, I think, is key. I think it's key. Peter comes in the room. He motioned with his hand for them to be quiet. Everybody's like, what is that? What happened? What's going on? He's like, be quiet. Calm down. And then he told this room, he described how the Lord had brought him out of prison. And he says this, and I think this is important. He says, tell James. By the way, there were multiple Jameses. He's not saying tell James that got executed. He's telling James, likely a sibling of Jesus, by the way. Sometimes that blows people's minds that Jesus had siblings. Tell James and the other brothers and sisters about what had happened. Share this story. Share what happened right here. He said this, and then he left for another place. So here's the situation. Trouble is looming over the church. Trouble is looming. It's a mission impossible scenario. There's no way that Peter can get out of this situation. It's like a halftime show at a Timberwolves game or a magician where they just keep raising the stakes. You know, they're like, I'm going to juggle knives. And you're like, I don't think it's a good idea. While riding a unicycle, that's really not a good idea. While blindfolded, in a cage with a polar bear. You know, you're like, how does this guy get his insurance premiums? Like, this is crazy. But it's like that. It's like this impossible situation. There's 16 guards. He's shackled between two guards. There's no way this guy's getting out. And that's the situation Peter's in. The only option here is his impending death. Of course, the church is praying. And this is why we highlight and emphasize prayer. It's why we spend a portion of our Sunday mornings in prayer. It's why you should take advantage of that. It's why we pray. It's why we get with small groups. It matters. It matters that we pray. And then, of course, Peter's sleeping, which is just wild, just a wild detail. And the thing that nobody knows, not even Peter because he's unconscious, but nobody knows, none of the Christians know, and not the prayers do not know this is happening, but that God is rescuing. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that we're being given a glimpse behind the curtain, that something is happening and nobody knows about it. Because how often do we just struggle with feeling like, God, where are you? What are you doing? Why isn't anything happening? And God's like, I can't tell you everything that's happening because there's too much. I couldn't explain it all. You wouldn't get it. Stuff is happening. God is rescuing. We like to share our opinions. We like to argue about the facts. Or maybe sometimes we're quiet because we don't feel like we have the perfect argument for whatever we're talking about or whatever the current conversation is about. But Peter quiets down this room and he just tells a story. He just tells everybody what God just did. There are few things more powerful than you and I just simply sharing spiritual experiences with one another. A few things. The ladies who were at the women's retreat the last couple of weeks, this is exactly what they talked about. And I heard some reports about some of the stories that were shared, and it sounded like it was powerful. People thought, oh, I'm the only one that's ever happened to, discovered that they weren't. People thought, I'm the only one who has that problem, discovered that they weren't. It was powerful for people to hear what was going on in others' lives, what they had experienced and what God might be doing. Peter just quiets the room and he tells a story. There's just so few things in the world that are more powerful than sharing those experiences, which is why your relationships with the other believers matters so much. It matters so much. This happens all over Scripture, by the way. John chapter 4, verse 39, Jesus talks to a woman, a Samaritan woman, and she goes and tells the town. And many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's story. The passage uses testimony, but that's all it is. It's a story. She's like, I was having this conversation. He told me everything about my life. That's a story. And the town is like, whoa, this guy must be the real deal. Mark 5:19, the guy was like, hey, I want to follow you. Jesus said, no, don't follow me. Go home to your own people. Tell them what God has done for you. Spread the word about this story, this interaction that we just had. Even later, Paul talks about this, 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 4. Therefore, among God's churches, we boast about you guys. We talk about you guys. The stuff you've been through and how you held up, man, we boast about you. We share your collective story. Or Psalm, and you go back all the way to what David wrote, Psalm 66, verse 16. He's like, it's poetic, but he's like saying, come and listen, all you who fear God. Let me tell you what he has done for me. I apologize in advance because this is the next 3 points that I quickly want to make. This is just the wording that came to me, and it sounds like it's a motivational talk, and I didn't want it to, but once I thought the idea, I couldn't unthink it, so you can throw those 3 points up there, but it literally sounds like a Tony Robbins or something. But this is what I want us to understand about telling stories, sharing spiritual experiences. That stories energize our faith and others. They energize. They don't even have, by the way, they don't even have to be your story. It could be like, hey, there's this family at my church that did this thing, and you're telling somebody else, and wow, it makes a difference that you shared this thing that you know about. Or I had a neighbor once. Did you notice my story about the volleyball dad? You guys have never met him. You're never going to meet him. You've never met his daughter. And that story about the prayer still had an impact on you. And you thought, I wonder if I should pray for my kid's coach too. It made a difference, even though you are not part of that story. It energizes faith. This is why you got to get to know people at church. It's so important that we share these stories. Stories contextualize unfamiliar situations. It's interesting when you read that story that Peter shared, and it's his own thoughts, and he's like, I didn't know what was happening. I thought it was all a vision. I was confused. I was disoriented. You hear that and you're like, it's actually a relief to hear you say that, Peter, because I feel confused and disoriented too. So it's nice to hear that you were confused and disoriented. It's nice when you talk to other people in the room and they're like, we went through this really difficult time in our marriage and we didn't know if we were going to make it. And you hear that and you think, oh, I'm grateful that someone else has struggled with some hard things. Because I look at them now and it looks like things are okay because we like to present this outside thing. But it's good to know it contextualizes us in unfamiliar situations when we're disoriented and confused. And then finally, it helps us visualize God's work when we cannot see God working, especially in our own lives. It helps us visualize that God is working. I told you to hold on to verse 2, all the way back at the beginning of the chapter, where Herod had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. Luke opens the story with real bad news. He says this is the context that all this is taking place in. James died. And I think if we're being honest, there are a lot of stories in this room of prayers that did not get answered the way that you hoped, of situations that did not play out the way that you hoped. You wanted to be able to go tell everybody like, oh, God did this, he fixed this, he healed this, and that's not how the story came to a conclusion. The person that was sick that you were praying for didn't get better. The marriage that was on the brink that you were praying for didn't heal. There's a lot of prayers in this room that did not play out the way that you wanted it to. And I think it's fair to say that there's this room, even in this room, there's doubt in your life. There's questions you have. There's confusion you have that you're living with and you don't know what to do with. And I'm just telling you, those stories matter too. The hard stories matter too. They really matter. There is a real spiritual danger. This happens all the time, and it happens in a lot of churches because we have this tendency to want to curate our experiences so that we only disclose the positive. And there's a danger in that. That will eventually kill faith because it means that we can't truly disclose everything that's happening in our lives. We can only share the good things that are happening and never share the difficult things or the hard things or the things that feel like they're painful and isolating. And when we do that, we become isolated. You become more lonely when you feel like you can't share with people the hard stuff in your life. In fact, it can feel shameful. Because you're like, why is everybody around here having all their prayers answered left and right? Why is all this good stuff happening to everybody left and right? And my story is not like that. It can feel shameful. And so when you share hard things, you realize that, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. When you share doubts, you realize, oh, my preacher has the same doubts. You're not alone. It's not just you. But you've got to be willing to share those things. You've got to have the relationship and the connection and the investment that it requires to have those kinds of interactions. It's easy to share positive stories. It's hard to share difficult ones. So I want to ask you this question that we always talk about at the end of every sermon, and it's this. What is your next step? What is the thing that you need to do? What is the person that you need to get to know? What is the prayer that you need to share? What is the story that you need to give to someone else so that it can help energize their faith or help contextualize their circumstances or help familiarize their understanding of God and their situation? I wanted to wrap up with this. This is dangerous. I'm going to ask for your feedback. Is it fair to say there are maybe 2 or 3 answered prayers in the room every week? Just small ones, not like big ones, just tiny, like little bitty prayers. Is that fair? Getting some nods? Yeah? Maybe more? Yeah? More? Yeah? Daryl thinks more? Yeah? Some of you are like, less, I don't want to hear from you. We only want positive here. Just kidding. Just kidding. That's fair. I think it's fair. Now, we're not telling stories of like, an angel broke me out of prison. I was about to be beheaded, and there I was, didn't know what was going on. No, little tiny things, tiny answers to prayer, minor miracles, just little bitty, cute little miracles, right? Small spiritual victories. Let me give you some examples. See if you think this is fair, that this happens. Maybe you're experiencing something incredibly stressful at work. You've been assigned to some project. And sure, yes, you said you knew how to run that program on your resume, but you didn't actually think they were going to ask you. And now you're in this, and they're like, yeah, you got to do this, but you got to lead this team, and you got to give a speech. And you're like, uh-oh, I'm in serious trouble. I gotta pray about this. And all of a sudden, you get reassigned to a different project. Like, you prayed, and then something happened, right? It's small. Right, little thing. Or how about this? Maybe some of you feel like, oh, we haven't been having just really awesome interactions with our kids. It's been a lot of discipline, a lot of like lecture, a lot of like, you got to get this right. And it's been hard, and you've been seeing your kids distance themselves a little bit from you because every interaction is about something difficult. And then for whatever reason, practice was canceled, and everybody happened to be home that night, and you had a family dinner. And people actually talked, and they opened up, and it was like, wow, that feels really good to have these positive interactions. Small little answer to prayer, little thing. Or how about this? Maybe some of you are experiencing this. You've got a friend, a family member who just is not interested in spiritual things at all, but you've tried, you've probed, but it's just like brick wall, not interested, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to maintain the relationship, but we're not really getting anywhere. And then out of the blue, they text you something like, when does your church service start? And you're like, kind of go into panic mode, lose your mind a little bit because you're like, I don't want to mess this up, right? It's a small little thing that God might be doing. There's no breaking out of prison. It's just little, right? So you think that there are 2 or 3 things like that happen every week? Yeah, I think so. If we could collect those stories somehow and share them broadly with everybody in the room, and we were actually open to hearing those, if you could somehow inject those into your spiritual mind, you would run through a brick wall for Jesus. You would be so inspired, you would be so wound up, you would be so excited, you would take on the 1980 USSR hockey team and win. You would be like, this is good stuff because I see what God is doing, not always in my life, but in the lives of people around me about whom I'm praying. You would be so excited. And so maybe the question or maybe the issue is not necessarily that God is not working, but that we're not paying attention. We're not sharing, we're not disclosing, we're not telling, we're not asking, we're not developing the relationships that it would require to be able to have people share those things with us. I think God is working, but it's quiet, and some of the reason it's quiet is because we're just not quieting everybody down and say, let me tell you what God just did for me. I'm going to ask the prayer team to come up, or the prayer team, prayer team would be great too. Praise team. To come up. That would actually been an interesting way to end this. Have everybody on the prayer team come up and you could be like, I'll go talk to them. But I'm going to ask the praise team to come up and we're going to sing a song in closing. And the song says, Who You Say I Am. It's the name of the song. And the idea is that even when we don't feel these things, these are truths that God declares about us, that God creates a new reality in us and through us and for us. This is who we are. And this is good. It's good news because we don't always feel it. This is why it's so valuable for you to get with people, get with Christians, spend time with one another, hearing one another, knowing one another, sharing with one another.